Well, hello and welcome to the Rangers Reviews reimagined match report, where we partner with StatsBomb to give you somewhat of an alternative look at the past game. Today, we're obviously going to be speaking about the opening day win over Livingston, which was relatively comfortable, and taking you through some of the underlying numbers and trends from the game. So we're going to start with the trend line from the game, which is pretty self-explanatory, and anyone that will watch this game would not be that surprised looking at it. So you can see clearly that Rangers dominated throughout. There wasn't a spell of pressure for Livingston at all. They had 2 attempts on goal the entire game. They didn't test John McLaughlin whatsoever. They didn't even get close to testing John McLaughlin. What's interesting, I think, and you can see this in our piece on the Rangers Review website, is the fact that if you look at when Rangers go 2-0, it's not really until then that they start to create a couple more high value chances. Now, David Martindale said after the game that 3-0 flattered Rangers, and while in a sense that isn't true, because as we've just discussed, his side didn't threaten the Rangers goal whatsoever, and were really offered no offensive threat at all. Rangers didn't really start to create a really high regular number of high volume chances until late in the second half, which was obviously helped when Livingston went down to 10 men when they had an injury after they'd made 3 subs. But as you can see, a few high-value chances at the end. Glenn Kamara's, obviously, which we'll touch upon later, which should have made it 4-0. It was a pretty routine home win for Rangers. I think when an opposition is so focused on restricting, you can't ask for much more than 3-0 and without letting them have an attempt on goal. So we'll move on to the passing network for Rangers throughout from the starting 11. You can see there the higher XG rating for players down the right side. All 3 of the goals that Rangers scored came from the right side of the pitch. Tavernier getting 2 assists, and the third, Kemar Roof, coming after a little bit of a stramash in the box. And you can see as well what's interesting, Calvin Bassey had really high involvement throughout. His involvement is mirrored there of Tavernier's, but his output wasn't as good, which is why he's got a lower XG. And that's something that I think Bassey, if he really wants to become a first-choice left-back at Rangers, will need to improve on, because numerous times he got into good crossing areas and he either hit the first man, a couple of times he didn't find Tavernier when he was making a run at the back post. But yeah, interesting to see that Rangers had real success down the right, with Stephen Davis coming over to support attacks on the right a little bit more often. Fashion Sakala wasn't really that involved. It's a difficult game to come into. It will take him time to adapt, but I think you could see once Kemar Roof came on, and we'll show this as we go to the second half passing network for Rangers Livingston. You can see Kemar Roof just behind Fashion Sakala, that little orange circle. He was only on the pitch for 20 minutes, but he did have a higher XG rating than Fashion Sakala throughout the 70 minutes that he was on the pitch. And that's just, I think, playing the centre forward role at Rangers for a season where he knows what he's doing. And yeah, so we'll move on to the Livingston passing network for the starting 11. And as you can see, pretty much what you expect. Little to no XG rating there at all. What's interesting, I think, if you look at this, is Craig Sibbald's positioning, as well as Scott Pittman. They're both quite high for a team that was really quite focused on restricting the opposition. And that's because Livingston, I think, came out and tried to stop Kamara and Davis progressing the ball. Pittman actually had quite a lot of luck with Kamara. He made 18 pressures. Sibbald had a lot of luck with Kamara. He made 18 pressures, and quite often players don't want to get tight to Kamara because obviously he's so efficient at rolling them. He's so efficient one-on-one. He's so efficient at letting the ball roll across his body and either going with the pace of the ball or cutting it back across when the opposition players committed his body weight. But I think Sibbald had some luck, and that was interesting that one of the ways Livingston obviously tried to stop Rangers was to stop them at source, as opposed to just sitting back and allowing wave after wave of attack. Second half as well, you can see the only slight difference is that they were slightly more lopsided trying to defend their left side, Rangers right. And as mentioned, 2 of the 2 goals in the second half both came from Rangers right, which makes sense. Moving on to the pressure frequency heat map, and you can see Rangers have attempted a lot of regains in certain areas, notably high up on the right and in the deep defensive area. And I think, again, that can be attributed to Livingston trying to stop at source, and some teams having a little bit of luck with that. They are a team that likes to squeeze up the pitch, even when they're defending. They do it a lot at home. And I think that's how they got some success in limiting the number of chances that Rangers had on their goal, particularly up until late in the game. And Livingston's pressure frequency map, I don't think there's much to talk through here, apart from the fact it's interesting that they got a little bit more success, or certainly try to attempt a little bit more pressure on Rangers left. Maybe this is because Rangers are a little bit more offensively minded in the midfield on the left, with Aribo lining up on the left of the midfield 3. Maybe not, but certainly And they didn't have too many luck in terms of turnovers throughout the entirety of the game. And lastly, we'll go on to the shot map. Rangers' expected goals were 1.97. They outshone that by 3. The 2 goals that they scored, Hadji and Scott Wright, both had a XG rating of 0.07, which shows how impressive both of the goals were. The interesting thing, I think, and the impressive thing for Rangers is they weren't trying speculative efforts. You can only see 4 shots from outside the box there, one of which was a free kick from James Tavernier, and only the Rangers only had a 0.02 XG rating following a dribble, so they didn't really get much success, notably probably because of the limited space they had to work in that department. Livingston's shot map doesn't really leave us with much to talk about. Again, they had two attempts, neither of which were on target. The header from Obadiah in the first half, I think, looked a better chance in real time than it actually was. It only had an XG rating of 0.08, and Jack Hamilton with the other shot, which again was speculative, had an XG rating of 0.04 and was nothing to write home about. So just finally, what we'll touch upon is Yanis Hadji's goal, and I think this is just an interesting point because of the nature of the goal. So something that you've seen from Rangers a lot is they'll attack the front post with set pieces, free kicks. I'm thinking of Connor Goldson's goals last year against Celtic and Dundee United, notably, and he attempted it a lot, and I think that's because what teams will often do is they won't place their strongest headers of the ball towards the front of their defensive line. They'll try and keep them deeper because that's traditionally where centre halves would go up and attack from. But Goldson has had a lot of success straying offsides and coming round the front of these defensive blocks from free kicks. And what Hadji did, and you can see in the freeze frame, that while Livingston players have funneled around him, because this is by the time he's cut back onto his right foot, no Rangers players are close to him, and that's because he was able to isolate himself at the back post, with Livingston so focused on the predominant aerial presences that Rangers were putting towards the front post. And in doing so left Hadji free. So I think this is planned by Rangers, and I think it'll be interesting to see if they do this throughout the season, because I think it will keep what they try to do from free kicks fresh. I think it will allow them to retain this really successful free kick piece where Goldson runs off the front of the defence, and Hadji took the goal expertly again, 0.07 XG rating. So you can be very happy with that. So that is all we'll speak about today. We will be doing these videos after every single Scottish Premiership match, giving you all the data and underlying trends from every game in partnership with StatsBomb. Thanks.